this will be a tournament battle between me and Happy Souls in the, I believe it's called the Wolf of Remus No Holds Barred something tournament. And it's the first tournament battle for me in a year, I think. I have been playing a lot of quick battles and some battles against quite decent players, but it's been some time since I've played anything competitively. And sometimes I get my ass handed to me by good players and sometimes I win, but I figured it was good to play some players who play competitively. Now there are no specific rules other than max 1 elephant, no spam, both players are attackers. That's about it. The map is Nemetosana, and my build is 6 avocati and 2 auxiliary infantry and a hostati, auxiliary cavalry and equites, auxiliary cavalry and equites, and legatus, hostati, and I've got 2 auxiliary balearic slingers, a Syrian archer, and 3 levies. Happy Feet brought 1, 2, 3, 4. He brought 5 Baktria royal horse, 6 scale thorax hoplites, 1 eastern spearman, and an Indian war elephant, and 2 of these mercenary Tarentines. So infantry advantage goes to me, skirmishing advantage goes to me, but my opponent has done something very smart and secured a decisive cavalry advantage. So my opponent has, it's going to be very difficult for me to stop the cavalry, because my opponent has basically 3 more cavalry units than I have and 1 unit of elephants. Now I'm making a slight mistake at the beginning, a potential mistake. I'm keeping my lines fairly wide, and that is going to make it easier for both cavalry and elephants to punch through. But the plan is to keep the lines wide, so it will take some time to go around here. And also, you can see that Happy Feet deployed a bit far back. Maybe he wanted to take care of something with his Tarentines first. So I'm moving forward, and this is going to be fairly challenging to deal with because since my opponent didn't bring any skirmishers, or he does have these Tarentine cavalry, but I count them as cavalry because they are able to take care of my skirmishers. Because he didn't bring any skirmishers, the only job of my skirmishers, the most important job, is to take care of the Indian war elephants. But it's going to be very difficult getting good shots in when they are protected by cavalry. And I could have had some skirmishing cavalry, some Numidians, but it would also have been difficult to use them to hit the elephants when they are protected like this by cavalry. So this is a good way of using elephants by Happy Feet here. The lines are slowly closing. My opponent is starting to send cavalry around, and this is of course a problem, because if I allow my cavalry to get shot at, I'm in trouble, and if I allow my cavalry to get pulled out of my formation, then it's going to be much easier for my opponent to send in some cavalry of his own. And I can't really stop this wing of both cavalry and elephants unless I manage to somehow shoot it to death. So while I'm looking at this battle in retrospect, I could have just shifted my lines and adopted a slightly narrower formation, and then tried to post my brace, my Soki and my Avocati cohorts here, and kind of tilted the lines and tried to get some shots off on these Indian war elephants, because it would have taken some time before these scale thorax hoplites would have gotten there. So now it's just moving slowly towards the flank here while we are doing some skirmishing. Not really getting any shots in. I don't think I've lost anything yet, and neither has my opponent. So it's just moving back and forth with skirmishers basically. I don't want to commit my cavalry just yet, because committing this cavalry is of course going to open up for his cavalry to come in. Now an option would of course be to kind of box up, because but that's the problem here. You couldn't boxing up wasn't really an option because both players are the attacker, and attacking can count as skirmishing as well. But if I was going to create a more defensive formation and box up, it would have meant that if he my Happy Feet had pulled away with his Tarentines, so we weren't skirmishing anymore, then I would have to go on the offensive, and that would open me up for attacks. These scale thorax hoplites are decent units, but they are no match for evocati. The main problem here is elephants. So the two of the issues here are, one, cavalry getting to my skirmishers, and elephants getting to my infantry and my cavalry, basically. So I'm trying to get some shots off on his Baktria noble horse to weaken it a bit. Always helpful to get some damage done. Arrows coming in there, and none of them died yet because they have very good stats. They have some shields as well. Very good melee infantry. Melee cavalry. Over here, some more skirmishing. Managed to hit a Tarentine or two actually, but nothing major going on. Now he's moving his cavalry around, which of course is potentially problematic. Levies with 2 kills. And that's basically all that's happened. A lot of maneuvering, or on my opponent's part, a lot of maneuvering, because he basically wants to get into the back here so he can send in his guys. And I have kind of a loose perimeter here, but nothing that can really stop multiple cavalry units coming in. And he's also doing something smart here by closing the gap between our lines, so it will be easier. It would be harder for me to pull these guys back and to support with them. So my levies are getting caught here. I'm going to countercharge with my auxiliary infantry, but my opponent is pulling out his Baktria noble horse, so I'm not going to be able. And here I'm making a pretty substantial mistake, because I am going to commit here, because I see that his Baktria noble horse stops, so I want to get the charge with my auxiliary cavalry so it can defeat this Baktria noble horse. And I'm also going to try to chase after this Baktria noble horse, try to stop it with my equites and with my auxiliary infantry. But since I'm doing this, since I'm committing here, that means that these guys are free to swing around. And also here, my opponent sent in his Baktria noble horse, and this was probably just to stop my auxiliary cavalry from being able to support anything. And the same with the equites here, probably just charging to stop them being able to support anything. Now, I am firing here at the Baktria noble horse. They are taking damage. But now I have a pretty big problem, because my opponent has he has 4 cavalry units that are free to move into my back lines. So it's only going to be a matter of time before I lose my skirmishers. I'm able to take care of this Baktria noble horse. It's going to die, so maybe it wasn't the best time to send them in. He's sending in some eastern spears, and they're going to get attacked by this evocati, and they're going to die very quickly to evocati. But again, the problem, elephants are moving in here, my general is here, I've got some equites here, and these Indian war elephants are going to wreck everything. Now here's the problem, a double envelopment of cavalry is coming, so although I am managing to pull back here and block this approach, I am going to try to block this approach, but there's just too many units coming in here. So my Happy Feet is doing a very nice envelopment, and I'm not being able to move my units out of the way in time, and this engagement took forever. The Baktria noble horse is just tanking against spears and tanking against these guys, but now it's starting to waver. But my opponent's getting his Tarentines into my skirmishers, and that's of course a GG, basically, because once my skirmishers are gone, I have lost the capacity to deal with these Indian war elephants in any reliable way. So I'm out of range here, can't really fire at them yet, and it's just a chaos. My units are much slower, and he still has these cavalry units free that he can use to attack my skirmishers, and I couldn't find anywhere safe to put my skirmishers. That was the main problem here, so they're just going to get sandwiched between these units. Now I could have kept pulling back, but to be honest, I wasn't really sure how to deal with this, because I knew I had to preserve my skirmishers, and I knew I had to well, one thing I could have done, I could have disengaged this evocati, so they would have thrown their pila at the Indian war elephants. That could have worked. And that's the plan here. If I'm going to lose all of my skirmishers, which it looks like I am, then I'm going to try to use the Pila on the Evocati cohort to finish these Indian War elephants. If I make them run amok and they kill enough of their own men, I have a chance here. It's a slim chance, but it's a chance. So I'm not too happy about how I played here, and one of the mistakes I did at the faction selection screen was I was thinking, okay, he's picking Baktria, I'm going to pick Rome just to I'm going to pick Rome because I'm expecting to come up against an elephant, and if I come up against an elephant I can just bring some levies and Syrian archers to deal with it and some cavalry to keep the elephants away. Now it turned out to not be that simple, because my opponent, instead of spending points on elephants, he chose to spend points on cavalry. So he had a very decisive cavalry advantage, and he was able to move in with his cavalry in a very nice way. So I think one of the only reasons I could have defended from that many cavalry units as Rome was if I just spammed cavalry myself, but then my infantry would be lacking, and I wouldn't have the tools to deal with the Indian War elephants, or of course kind of adopt a box formation, because this is melee cavalry. But I would still have needed to attack in some way, so I don't think this build was the best build to counter elephant and cavalry Baktria. That is the weakness of Rome, elephants and strong cavalry factions. And these scale thorax hoplites were probably just there to hold the Evocati while the horse and elephants cycle charge. So I can see my opponent's build working in several ways, one being the elephants doing a lot of killing like they're doing here, and the other being if I manage to get some fire shots off but they're not running amok. And the other way I can see it working is if when the engagement, the Evocati scale thorax hoplite engagement happens, then the scale thorax hoplites can just go into phalanx and wait for all of this cavalry to come charging into the rescue and go for rear charges after the cavalry fight is won, because in most cases this army is going to win the cav fight against Rome. So bringing I brought cavalry counter skirmishers. I brought, how many skirmishers did I bring here? I brought 6 skirmishers, and my opponent had 7 cavalry, so he was able to counter my skirmishers very well, and then use the elephants to decisive effect. So I'm going to try to throw Pila at these elephants, try to kill them that way. Over here the Tarentines are fighting Equites, and it looks like they're winning that fight. So I didn't manage to move into range with my Evocati. I'm going to try to pull out for a bit, finishing off this Bactrian noble horse. So now my opponent is starting to, well, the Evocati actually, it looks like they won over there, or yep, no, the Tarentines won. So my opponent has run out of cavalry. His cavalry is dead, but he still has his elephants, and if I can manage to kill the elephants, make them run amok, or just deal with them in some way, then I think these scale thorax hoplites can be dealt with, at least easier than these Indian War elephants. And they are exhausted, so they will have a 20% decrease in speed, and they will also have a melee attack that is cut in half. So it should be easier to deal with them, although I have the problem here of them just... And this, I just have to comment on this, because this is just so fucking stupid in this game, that you have 2 units of men here, locked in melee, right? And the elephants are running into that blob of men, just crushing guys. But wait, they're only crushing guys that are wearing Roman armor. The other guys, the laws of physics don't apply to the scale thorax hoplites, because somehow physics knows that they are friendly. So the laws of energy don't apply to these scale thorax hoplites. Please fix this, Creative Assembly. It would be very nice if elephants couldn't be used in such a retarded way. Still, that's one of the reasons why I don't like elephants and chariots, because they just allow for retarded gameplay. But to be fair, my opponent did outplay me here. It's not that he plays bad, but he just has elephants. No, he picked a build that was able to counter my skirmishers, which he needed to do to make the elephants work. So very good build. for killing skirmishers and then having the elephants left. I have some levies and some a legatus unit left over here, auxiliary infantry, auxiliary cavalry, so I'm going to try to just kill these eastern spearmen for the hell of it. These scale thorax hoplites are getting wrecked by evocati, but evocati, hostati actually, is being wrecked by mercenary Tarentines, and I hope they would throw their javelins now, but they aren't going to do it. Since the elephants are exhausted, however, they are going to get killed somewhat effectively in melee by these evocati. Killing a lot of the evocati though. And look at this, 300 kills pretty soon. So these guys are paying for themselves quite nicely any minute now. And now I was just not able to throw the pila because the elephants crashed in. I saw a guy holding a pila about to throw it there. Charging into the eastern spears with my legatus general, and they're not able to stand up to the charge, plowing in with my auxiliary cavalry, and that's going to probably kill the eastern spearmen. But since the army is losing, I'm getting, I believe it is a -50 or -70 modifier to my morale, because the army is doing so poorly. So even though my general is alive, he's going to rout the bastard. And he actually only has a morale of 55. I haven't noticed that before, but the legatus general has the same morale as these guys, and the evocati morale is actually higher than the general morale. So that was quite interesting, I thought. Now, a valiant defeat, I don't know how valiant that was. I killed 654 while my opponent killed 1409. And you can see these Tarentines, they did a lot of work. Some of the scale thorax hoplites did well, but I think that was against the auxiliary infantry, hostati and these guys. But as you can see, I learned something from this, because my opponent's decisive cavalry advantage was able to entirely neutralize my skirmishing advantage. And this is how it works in this rock, paper, scissors, Rome 2 kind of thing. It's skirmishers beat elephants, but cavalry beats skirmishers, and good sword infantry will usually beat good spear infantry, but then again elephants will be able to fairly effectively deal with sword infantry like this. So it was very well played by happysouls, I think. I'm not going to lie, I did not enjoy losing that way. It was stressful and not a very fun experience, but I did learn something from this, and I learned something about how to approach I think competitive games, because my choice in countering the elephant was a bit too obvious. I probably should have gone for a faction that has a bit more, a few more mid-tier spears, and even I probably should have gone for Carthage, to be honest. It's Carthage. I usually play Carthage. I rarely play Rome, so Carthage I think could have countered this fairly effectively. Bring an elephant of its own, some Numidians, just stay away from the mercenary Tarentines with the elephants, and things should be golden for Carthage. But there you go. I hope to join more tournaments in the future and get a lot better at competitive Rome 2, because as you've seen from my latest videos, quick battles are driving me absolutely crazy. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again on the battlefield.